Discipleship takes off with an intentionally organic process. Hey, I'm Pastor Matt with your Missionary Pathway Mission Insight. And this insight actually came out of getting to sit down in a leadership huddle with the Multiply group and being able to just talk about leadership and that process of putting processes into church. You know, a lot of times one of the big pushbacks we get when we try to put a process into church to help people grow in their faith is this fear that it will be overly programmatic. And our fear with something being overly programmatic is that it's like having a one-size-fits-all solution. And what we realize is one size doesn't fit everybody. But the problem is we oftentimes jump off the other end of the spectrum and we say we don't want to be overly programmatic, so we won't have any program or any plan. Now here's the problem with not having any plan. In other areas of your life, when you don't have a plan, you don't tend to see results. And the same thing can come in our spiritual lives. You know, if we want to grow in our faith, if we want to grow in what it means to be a disciple, somebody who's learning to follow the way of Jesus, then we need some kind of plan. But at the same time, we don't want to be overly programmatic with that plan. So what do? Well, what we found is that discipleship really takes off when you have an intentionally organic process. Now, what do we mean when we say intentionally organic? Well, when something's intentionally organic, it has an intentional path and plan. But at the same time, it's not so scheduled or over-scheduled that it can't move and shift to the needs of the individual. You want a plan, but you also want something that deals with people on an individual level. That's why discipleship should be an intentionally organic process. And so what does it look like to create an intentionally organic discipleship process? Well, look at Jesus. Jesus had his disciples and they had things that he would teach them, but he also just spent a lot of time with them. They followed him. They had moments where they were just sitting down, eating a meal, and teaching would just happen right there in the moment. Moments where they were traveling together and hanging out and conversations would break out. If you want to see a really cool picture of this, check out that TV series, The Chosen. The Chosen gives you a really cool picture of what it could have been like to be boots on the ground discipling with Jesus. And so when it comes to that process that you read in Scripture, there's a couple key things that stick out. Number one, have a process. Jesus even told his disciples at the end of Matthew 25, go and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them all I've commanded you. So he gave them two really simple things to do. He said, here's your plan, baptize them and teach them. He didn't tell them what teaching style they had to use for each and every single individual. He didn't tell them where they needed to be baptized, whether in a church or a river. He just said, here are two things. That's the intentional part. Now you take it and embed it in the culture in which you're in. So have a process, but keep that process simple. And that's our second thing. You know, oftentimes the reason we hesitate to make disciples or have disciples that go on to make other disciples is simply because the thing is too complicated. Oftentimes people look at the process, and if it's a 10-week course or 3 10-week courses, somebody doesn't really come to the end of those and go, I think I could teach somebody that. Sometimes our processes are too complicated. Because the process is too complicated, we don't see people turning around and teaching other people the way of Jesus, the way of Jesus has been poured into them. So when you're thinking of an intentionally organic disciple-making process, make sure it's simple. And then finally, make it reproducible. When something has a process and it's a simple process, it becomes highly reproducible. Whenever you're looking at making a disciple, you should be making disciples, helping people learn to follow the way of Jesus in a way that they could not only experience, but they could turn around and do for somebody else. And when that happens, when you have a simple, highly reproducible process, that's where you start to see disciple-making movement happen. People who are following Jesus to the third and even the fourth generation. So I want to encourage you, have a process, keep it simple, and make it highly reproducible. Something that's intentionally organic. You may be saying, that sounds great and I love that concept, but I really don't know where to begin. If that's you, we can help. In fact, the reason we put together these mission insights is to not only pour into you great missional thoughts and frameworks that you can use in your everyday life, but to also help you connect with a really simple process, the missionary pathway. And so if we can help you in that process to learn how to create your own intentionally organic disciple-making process for yourself or your ministry, don't hesitate to reach out. Connect with us right here at missionarypathway.org. You can download the Missionary Pathway for free, or you could email us directly through the website, and we'd love to connect with you and help. However we can help you connect and have an intentionally organic disciple-making system, we want to be able to help. So till next time, it's a joy hanging out with you right here on Mission Insights.